Hello everybody. In this video, we are going to approach a new literary genre, which is poetry. We are going to explain what poetry is. In addition, we will give the characteristics that make poetry different from other literary genres. Moreover, we are going to discuss the main elements and the main types of poetry. Short fiction is a widespread genre due to its realistic mode and moderate length. The term is used to refer to narrative texts that are written in prose. The word narrative indicates that short fiction tells a story, and the word fiction means imagination. So, the short story is an imaginative narrative that is made up by author's imagination. We said that short fiction has a realistic mode, but it is not real. It represents life with the imaginative touch of the author. So, fiction does not give a photocopy of our daily life. Rather, it offers a representation or a recreation of it. The characters, the setting, the events we encounter in the short fiction are realistic, but not real. Since the short fiction is imaginative and not real, the real historical narratives are excluded. Fiction also, like the other literary genres, aims to convey ideas. It delights and pleases, but teaches and instructs. This means that short fiction is written to highlight ideas and thoughts. Short fiction can be basically divided into 5 types. We are going to talk briefly about each type separately. The focus of our discussion will be on the short story because it is our main topic and is the most popular type in our current time. The main types of the short fiction are the parable, the fable, the tale, the novella, and the most important, the short story. The parable is a short narrative, usually not more than a paragraph, based on an analogy between actual details of the story it tells and the implicit lesson it aims to illustrate. The actions in the parable are not important in themselves. Their importance springs rather from the theme or the idea they aim to illustrate. For example, the story will tell about the old man who gathers his sons and asks them to break the sticks separately, which they easily do, and then together, which they cannot, illustrates the theme of strength is in unity. So the most important here is the theme, not the action itself. The second type of short fiction is the fable. The fable is a short story that aims to convey a moral lesson that is often stated explicitly at the end. The major characters in this type of short fiction are basically animals which talk, behave, feel, and act like human beings. Kalila wa Dimna is a good example of the fable. The third type of the short fiction is the tale. The tale is a short story, the emphasis in which is either on the events themselves or on the main character of the story. The tales are generally classified into 2 types. The first type is the tale of incident, in which the author focuses on the events themselves. The detective stories is an example of this type. The second type of tales is the tale of character, in which the author is interested in revealing the aspects of the main characters in the story. The tale of Hatim al-Ta'i is an example of this type of tales. The fourth type of short fiction is the novella. It is also called the short novel. It lies in the middle between the novel and the short story. It is less complicated than the novel and more complicated than the short story regarding setting, plot, characters, and conflict. Conrad's Heart of Darkness is a good example of novella. And the last type of short fiction is the short story. It is more complex than the previous types except the novella. Its plot is more developed than the other shorter forms of the story. The short story usually revolves around the main idea and one single condensed plot. The short story also is less didactic and moralistic than the other shorter forms of fiction. The narrative technique of the short story is creative and subtle. It also focuses more on the inner and psychological states of the characters. Now, it is important to know the elements of the short story. The short story includes a number of elements that are put together to achieve the goal of the author to convey his message to the reader. Basically, the main elements of short story are plot, characters, setting, point of view, theme, and language. Plot is simply defined as the sequence of events involving the characters. It gives the main events of the story in relation with the characters. So, a plot is not what happened, it is how it happened. It is arranged depending on the aim of the author. Sometimes it is chronologically arranged and sometimes it is not. Characters are the human elements in the short story. They are from flesh and blood, but with symbolic indications. They stand for something other than themselves. For example, the father in Canafani's The Land of the Sad Oranges stands for the helpless Arab nations. Characters can be classified into major characters and minor characters, or into flat and round characters. The flat characters are static and predictable, while the round characters are changing and developing throughout the course of the story. Setting is defined as the place and time in which the story takes place. It affects the characters and the theme. Point of view is simply defined as the way in which the story is told. Generally, there are two types of point of view. The first is the third-person narrative using he, she, or they, and the first-person narrative using the I. Theme is defined as the main idea or ideas around which a literary work centers. About the language, the style differs from one author to another. They use the language in a way suits their themes and characters, but in general, figurative language such as imagery and symbolism is heavily used in the short fiction. We reached the end of this video. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.